Welcome to the new episode of the Cyber Threats Radar podcast. Every modern organization chases speed and efficiency. We rely heavily on cloud infrastructure, SaaS platforms for, well, everything from HR to sales, and this massive network of third-party contractors.
We do this because it works,
Nice.
right? It's effective.
Exactly. But here's the reality nobody really wants to face. Every new partnership, every single API integration, every piece of shared data, it's basically an open invitation for a massive security vulnerability.
And that vulnerability is the third party. That's
Yeah.
precisely why we're doing this deep dive into third-party risk management, or TPRM.
Right.
Our mission today is, well, pretty straightforward. We want to pull out the essential knowledge you need to identify, assess, monitor, and, importantly, mitigate the risks coming from your partners, your vendors, suppliers.
The whole ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem. The main goal here is understanding how to build a security wall strong enough so that a vendor's problem absolutely does not become your problem.
Okay. And for this deep dive, we've got some great sources, primarily grounding ourselves in a really comprehensive framework and guide to TPRM from the security experts at Spin.AI.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, I think, isn't just the risk itself, it's the level of trust that's required. I mean, third parties routinely get the keys to the castle, right? Deep access to sensitive systems, proprietary data. The second their security posture weakens, their vulnerabilities just become instant and often catastrophic extensions of our own attack surface. If you operate in the cloud, you're in a shared security model. It's simple. If your partner fails, you fail.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. If third-party risk has, always been around to some extent, why is TPRM suddenly considered the essential pillar of security right now? Why can't we just isolate risk inside our own walls anymore?
Well, simply put, the perimeter's gone.
Yeah.
And the complexity has just exploded.
Right.
Think about it. Maybe 10 years ago, you might have had, 20 critical vendors, tops? Today, between your main cloud providers, all the SaaS subscriptions, specialist contractors, you might have 200, or maybe even 2,000.
Wow.
And every single one is a potential attack vector. So any breach over there can cascade directly to your customers. It's almost immediate.
Okay, so the scale is one huge factor.
Huge factor. But the necessity goes way beyond just the technical cybersecurity aspect. TPRM is now completely non-negotiable for compliance.
Right. The regulations demand proof you've done your homework, and the fines for getting it wrong are just staggering.
Exactly. If you're dealing with sensitive data, and who isn't these days, you have to comply with frameworks like GDPR, PCI DSS, and specifically HIPAA for healthcare orgs,
HIPAA.
or achieving something like a SOC 2 Type 2 report if you're a service organization. All of these demand demonstrable, documented vendor due diligence.
So you can't just trust them, you have to verify.
You've had to verify and prove you verify.
Yeah.
If you can't show you vetted the vendor handling your regulated data, those regulatory fines and penalties, they're coming straight for you.
And it's not just security and legal risk, which honestly is what most people focus on first. We also have to worry about whether the vendor is even going to be around tomorrow, operationally speaking.
There's the third critical leg,
Yeah.
business continuity. It's huge. If a key vendor, someone providing an essential service or maybe core infrastructure, if they experience downtime,
Or just go bust.
or worse, sudden financial instability, bankruptcy, your entire operation could literally grind to a halt. So TPRM isn't just about stopping breaches. It's about building in redundancy, setting strong contractual safeguards, and actually having failover plans ready to keep your lights on, even if a partner goes dark.
Okay, the scope is massive then. It's way beyond just checking if they use encryption. So if we agree the risk is this big, how does the security team, maybe a small or mid-sized one, practically build a repeatable framework? How do they do this without just drowning in endless paperwork and questionnaires?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where structure becomes your absolute saving grace.
Yeah.
The Spin.AI guide lays out a really clear, repeatable framework. They call it the 5-phase TPRM lifecycle.
Okay.
Think of this as your governance roadmap. It moves TPRM from being, this chaotic reactive thing into a predictable, manageable process.
So what are the phases?
Okay, it kicks off with phase 1, planning and inventory. Simple concept, hard execution. You cannot secure what you don't know you have.
Right.
So first, you have to define your organization's risk appetite. What are you willing to accept? Then, create a centralized inventory of every single vendor. And crucially, you map them based on what data they access and how critical they are to your day-to-day business.
That inventory part, that feels like the step everyone wants to skip, but it's probably the most fundamental. If you don't know who they are, the rest is useless.
It absolutely is. Everything builds on that foundation. If a vendor touches PII or critical infrastructure, boom, they're automatically a higher risk tier.
Makes sense.
And that tiering leads straight into phase 2, due diligence and assessment. This is the classic vetting step everyone thinks of. You classify vendors by risk tier critical, high, medium, whatever scale you use, and you collect evidence before you sign that contract.
So not after they're already onboarded.
Definitely not after.
Yeah.
This means sending out security questionnaires, yes, but maybe more efficiently, demanding actual reports like SOC or ISO certifications and recent penetration test results.
Okay, so you gather the evidence, you probably find some gaps. What happens then?
That flows right into phase 3, onboarding and contracting. You don't just sign their standard boilerplate agreement. No way. You embed mandatory security and compliance clauses. You set clear service level agreements, SLAs, and key performance indicators, KPIs. And you formally require them to remediate any significant gaps you found back in phase 2. This is where you lock in the legal teeth.
Got it. Contractual enforcement.
Exactly. Now here's the really critical insight, I think, where so many organizations stumble. Phase 4. Monitoring and performance management. Risk doesn't magically stop once a vendor is on board.
Right, it's ongoing.
It's totally ongoing. Most companies actually do phase 2 reasonably well, the initial check, but they often fail completely at phase 4. They treat TPRM like a one-and-done checkbox activity, maybe an annual review.
If that.
If that, even though a vendor's security posture can literally change hour by hour. So continuous monitoring of their security ratings, their posture, it's just non-negotiable today.
That distinction is so important. If you're only looking once a year, you're basically flying blind for 364 days.
You are completely blind. And then finally, there's phase 5, termination and offboarding. This is the cleanup phase, often neglected right up until it's way too late.
Yeah, the messy breakup.
Exactly. You must revoke all access immediately, ensure the secure return, or better yet, the certified destruction of your data, and then, importantly, document the lessons learned to feed back into your process for the next vendor selection.
Okay, this life cycle gives us a really solid framework, a clear checklist almost. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's talk about what happens when this process fails. Let's look at the real-world consequences. What recent examples really demonstrate the severe impact of getting third-party risk wrong?
Oh, there are plenty, unfortunately. I mean, look at some high-profile attacks just over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We saw Tenable confirm that major supply chain attack, it impacted over 700 organizations.
Wow, 700.
Yeah. And the breach didn't start inside Tenable. It came through one of their third-party vendors, SalesLoft Drift. That's a classic failure, potentially in continuous phase 4 monitoring, or maybe even a weakness in phase 2 due diligence around their API integrations.
And that Alliance Life case, that seems like a perfect example of a cloud access control failure, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Personally identifiable data for, what was it, about 1.4 million customers accessed?
1.4 million, yeah.
Because hackers exploited a vulnerability in a third-party cloud-based CRM system, and they apparently used social engineering to get in.
So probably weak access controls somewhere along the line.
It screams weak access controls. That's a red flag that ideally should have been caught during the phase 2 assessment. Or, more likely, it should have been flagged by phase 4 continuous monitoring, looking for those kinds of misconfigurations.
And we can't really talk about recent third-party issues without mentioning the ongoing situation around the Snowflake cloud platform in 2024 and into 2025.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
We know AT&T agreed to that huge $177 million settlement over breaches, and at least one of those was tied to the Snowflake platform.
Right.
And then you had those separate incidents targeting, at least 160 organizations through misconfigured Snowflake environments, allegedly set up by customers or their consultants.
So it wasn't even necessarily Snowflake itself being breached, but how people used it.
Exactly. When a massive core provider like that is involved, even through user misconfiguration, the blast radius is just enormous. It perfectly highlights how critical phase 4 continuous monitoring is, not just of the vendor, but of your own team's utilization of these powerful third-party platforms.
If we try and synthesize all those failures, they seem to share this common thread. Blind spots, things people weren't looking at. And the sources, particularly the Spin.AI guide, highlight a growing, often overlooked blind spot: compromised browser extensions.
Yes.
Like that example from early 2025, an extension developer for security firm Cyberhaven got phished. Result: Malicious code injected, impacting something like 3.7 million users. That just shows the traditional TPRM inventory might be too narrow.
This is exactly what we refer to as adjacent vendor risk, and it's precisely why continuous monitoring is so critical and non-negotiable now.
The adjacent risk. Explain that a bit more.
Well, traditional TPR mostly looks at the vendor you signed a contract with, right? Phase one inventory focuses there. But what if that vendor uses risky browser extensions themselves? Or, more commonly, what if your employees install malicious OAuth apps that connect directly into your core SaaS environment, like Google Workspace or M365?
Ah, so they bypass the whole procurement and vetting process.
Completely. Those are adjacent risks that bypass phase one inventory entirely. They're invisible to old school TPRM.
Okay.
And actually, speaking on behalf of Spin.AI's research team, we've been digging into this specific area quite deeply. We uncovered an additional finding recently, identifying 14.2 million more victims in something called the Redirection Browser Extension Attack Campaign.
14.2 million more. That's huge.
It's staggering, and it just illustrates the sheer critical need for continuous monitoring of these adjacent risks. Things like browser extensions, risky OAuth applications that plug into your core cloud and SaaS services.
Oh, yeah.
They are very often entirely forgotten in a traditional TPRM approach.
Okay, that really drives home the need for broader visibility. So if we connect this back to the practical due diligence in phase two, how do we evaluate risk practically? When you're looking at a potential new vendor, what's the checklist of hard evidence you absolutely must demand before signing any contract?
Right, let's get practical. You must demand hard evidence, period. Don't accept vague assurances or handshakes.
No more, trust me.
No, nor trust me. Demand certifications and audits. Look for things like SOC 2 Type 2 or ISO 27001. And critically, make sure the reports are recent. No older than 12 months, ideally. An old report is basically useless from a current risk perspective.
Okay, recent evidence. What else?
Secondly, you've got to examine their access model in detail. Are accounts role-based? Do they mandate multi-factor authentication MFA and single sign-on SSO for accessing the data they hold for you? Is privileged activity monitored?
And if they don't use MFA,
That's an immediate serious red flag. In today's world, that's almost table stakes for handling sensitive data.
makes sense. And then inevitably, things sometimes go wrong. You need to know what their plan is when they get breached, right?
Exactly. You have to look hard at their incident readiness. Do they have a documented, preferably tested, incident response plan? And even more importantly, you need an explicit notification SLA written into the contract.
The service level agreement again?
Yes. What is the contractual timeline for telling you about a breach that affects your data? 24 to 72 hours notification is pretty common now, and frankly, expected for any serious incident. If they refuse to commit to a specific window like that,
They're probably hiding something.
or they just don't have their response capabilities sorted out. Either way, it's a major risk for you.
Okay, that leads us nicely to the deal breakers. What are those undeniable red flags that should make a security professional tell the business, nope, walk away, or, at the very least, trigger an extremely serious renegotiation?
All right, top red flags. First, absolute refusal to provide audit evidence, recent pen test reports, or basic certification details. If they won't show their work, you have to assume they haven't done it or the results are bad.
Okay, lack of transparency.
Total lack of transparency. Second, opaque subcontracting or undisclosed subprocessors. If they're just passing your sensitive data along to 10 other companies you've never heard of,
You've lost control.
you have zero visibility into your actual attack surface. That's a massive, uncontrollable risk.
Right.
Third, having no incident notification SLA, like we just discussed, or refusing point blank to commit to firm timelines. If their contract just says they'll notify you in a timely manner,
That means nothing.
it's lawyer speak for whenever we get around to it, maybe.
Yeah.
You need concrete hours committed in writing.
Okay. And the fourth.
Fourth, watch out for overly restrictive contracts. Things that try to cap their liability at some absurdly low level, like, say, 1-month subscription fee for losing millions of your customer records. Or, even worse, contracts that deny you, the customer, the right to audit their compliance processes, especially if you have a reasonable suspicion something's wrong.
Those are definitely things to watch out for. And we can't forget that fundamental pitfall mentioned in the guide, the one that basically undermines this entire effort if you don't manage it. Shadow IT and sauce sprawl.
Ah, yes. The bane of many security teams.
When unapproved apps or vendors completely bypass procurement and the security team, they just evade the whole phase one inventory and phase two due diligence process, don't they?
They do. You can have the most beautiful, well-documented TPRM process in the world on paper, but if your employees are just downloading apps, connecting them to company accounts, and granting critical data access without any approval, you are completely exposed.
Okay. So pulling this all together, what does this really mean for you, the listener, if you're trying to build or improve your TPRM program? So it sounds like the biggest takeaway is that it can't be generic.
Absolutely not. The best practice here, and what the guide emphasizes, is a risk-based approach. You have to focus your limited time, your limited resources, where the actual risk defined by data sensitivity and operational criticality is highest. Don't treat a vendor providing office snacks with the same scrutiny as your cloud hosting provider.
Right. Prioritize. And we established pretty clearly that just doing an annual review isn't enough anymore. It has to be continuous. So how does a company actually achieve that continuous monitoring, especially at the scale needed to catch those sneaky adjacent risks, like the malicious browser extensions you highlighted earlier?
Yeah, managing this scale of risk across not just traditional vendors, but also SaaS apps, browser extensions, cloud services, it really demands automation. Manual spreadsheets just won't cut it anymore.
Too complex, too fast moving.
Exactly. And this is where solutions like the ones mentioned in the Spin.AI guide come into play. You need technology that provides both the signals, the alerts, and the context, not just static, outdated information.
Okay.
So for example, Spin.AI provides continuous monitoring and detection specifically for SaaS exposures with their Spin SPM tool that stands for SaaS Security Posture Management.
Spin SPM.
Yeah. This tool is designed to continuously check for things like misconfigurations in your SaaS settings, any unauthorized third-party access, those risky OAuth apps we talked about, and yes, malicious browser extensions that might have integrated themselves into your Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 environments.
So it helps find those threats early.
Helps you discover them and fix them much earlier, yes. It basically helps close that critical phase 4 monitoring gap we identified.
That comprehensive automated view sounds pretty essential then.
It really is becoming essential. And their overall platform, which they call Spin.AI,
Spin.AI.
it integrates these kinds of capabilities. It includes other advanced security solutions too, like ransomware detection and response, SpinRDR, and data loss prevention, SpinDLP, and crucially, it helps automate collecting the evidence you need to support compliance frameworks like HIPAA and SOC 2 Type 2.
So it helps with the paperwork too.
It fundamentally helps move TPRM from being this sort of yearly manual compliance chore into a continuous automated security function.
Okay, that summarizes the core takeaway perfectly, I think. TPRM is definitely not a one-time assessment you can just outsource and forget about. It's got to be a continuous cross-functional commitment. It absolutely has to involve procurement, setting the security team, enforcing that continuous monitoring piece.
And maybe one final thought to leave people with, to really solidify that commitment, you have to establish strong governance and clear accountability.
How do you do that practically?
Don't just list vendors in some dusty database. Assign dedicated vendor owners within the business people who are actually responsible for managing that relationship and keeping tabs on their ongoing security posture.
So someone owns the risk.
Someone owns the risk. And finally, integrate those critical third parties into your internal incident response tabletop exercises. Don't just test your own response. You need to actually validate that their notification process, their mitigation steps, that they actually work under simulated pressure long before a real crisis hits.
That's solid, actionable advice right up to the very end. Fantastic. Thank you for listening. Stay safe.